Hi there, my name is Dr. Becca Bland, and I'm here in London, England, and I'm introducing you to Standing Together.
And I'm Dr. Joshua Coleman in the San Francisco Bay Area and thrilled to be with my friend and colleague, Dr. Becca Bland.
Great. For the last decade, I have been running services in the UK that help people with family estrangement. I am the founder of Standalone, which is a UK-based non-for-profit that has helped so many people feel less alone and less abnormal with their family estrangement. Um, I have written so many articles and appeared on so many media pieces and to talk about family estrangement. And I'm really grateful to say that I've really helped people to get through this issue and to find support when there hasn't been a lot of support around.
And I'm a psychologist in private practice. About 13 years ago, I wrote one of the first books on parental estrangement called When Parents Hurt, Compassionate Strategies When You and Your Grown Child Don't Get Along. And as a result of that book, I was interviewed a lot in the media. I developed a very large following internationally of estranged parents and estranged adult children who are seeking reconciliation. And since that time, I've also conducted research at the University of Wisconsin Survey Center of over 1,600 estranged parents. I've done a weekly free Q&A for estranged parents and webinars for the past 10 years. So both Becca and I are really steeped in this topic from, in some ways, very different orientations. Becca's in some ways much more steeped in the adult child and much more steeped in the parents. So this is why we wanted to work together. And so we're calling it Standing Together.
Mm. But you're probably sat there thinking, what is family estrangement? It could be a word you've got no idea about. You might be familiar with family breakdown or divorce, but this is a very particular term that Josh and I are using. So, Josh, what is family estrangement?
Well, I think a lot of people are confused about it because it's been defined in so many different ways, and the research, people have defined it in different ways. I often think of estrangement as being a cutoff between a family member, but sometimes that cutoff is very severe, such as there's absolutely no contact. But other times it might be a very distant relationship, where maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once or twice a year, or there's more regular contact, but it's highly inflamed and conflictual. How about you, Becca? How do you think of it?
Yeah, I think we're in alignment there, Josh, with our definitions. And, through all the research I've done, the one thing we acknowledge is always that it's a very contested in terms of definition, but it
Mm.
is a loss of that family member and a living loss because they are alive and they are living somewhere. But we just don't have that closeness and that intimacy that we used to have. And because society puts such a high value on having really good relationships with your biological family, that means that ultimately people can feel very, very alone when they go through this, that they don't feel able to talk about it. They might feel that they've done something wrong or are abnormal because they've managed a boundary and don't have a relationship. Yet this is really common. And so 1 in 5 families will be impacted by this in the UK. And I think now the statistics say that 6% of people in America may be impacted by it too. So it's really interesting, I think, to acknowledge that this is something that's much more common than we talk about.
It is indeed, and one of the problems that I see, Becca, and I know that you've seen it as well, is that it's a really underserved population. And I mean, in the US, I have maybe one or two psychologists that I feel comfortable referring to, and I don't know how you feel in the UK, Becca, but it's something that people really aren't particularly well trained in, can make a lot of very serious mistakes. Can make people feel much more worse, much more isolated, much more ashamed, much more defective, really worsen their chances of reconciliation. So one of the reasons that Becca and I wanted to start doing this is to really train coaches, therapists, and clergy. And throughout these videos, we'll just be shortening that to coaches, so we don't have to say coaches, therapists, and clergy each time. But we want to train professionals so we know who to refer to, and so other people can be much more helped with this very significant social problem.
And people go to helping professionals and get really poor advice all the time. So, my research has shown time over that some people are just told you only get one mum and really guilt tripped by professionals into trying to establish reconciliation. And that isn't always the best path for people. Sometimes, relationships are irretrievable and unfortunately aren't healthy for people because there may be physical abuse or there could be very, very difficult behaviors that compromise someone's emotional or physical well-being within them. So Josh and I stand together today to kind of understand that there are many pathways to moving on and moving through estrangement. One might be reconciliation, and the other could be that you want to move on and have a different life. And I think there is a kind of lack of people in the helping professions really giving that non-judgmental viewpoint and allowing people to choose for themselves what's best for their life, and not giving very direct and very moralistic advice.
Right. I think that something you'll hear a lot from us is that there's been a real cultural shift in terms of families and what constitutes well-being in families and what causes well-being. And it's become much more around really building the friendship and the relationship and the communication. And so sometimes what happens with parents and adult children is that the parents are much more geared to an older form of respect and demanding a certain kind of interaction. And the adult child's been socialized much more towards personal happiness and growth. And so getting the two generations more in communication is a big part of what we're about.
Absolutely. And so standing together is offering really unique professional development training, as Josh says, to coaches, to therapists, and to clergy, or in fact, anybody that's in the helping professions that feels they come across people who are impacted by family estrangement. Um, and I think standing together, we're offering 3 distinct modules of training. So this is all online and all digital and accessible anywhere in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And this is really to really, I suppose, help you to be able to take your time with this. So module 1, it is a really, really simple introduction to family estrangement, looking at what the issue is, looking at why it happens, and also looking a bit around kind of the impact of that for somebody that chooses to be estranged from a family member or is on the other end of being estranged by a family member. Um, and so that is really going to give you the skills and confidence of knowledge ultimately, and being able to understand much more about the facts.
Right. So yeah. So as Becca was saying, we have 3 different modules. The first module, and we have a total of 10 videos that we've done in this same format. So the first module is kind of an introduction to estrangement, getting kind of the broad picture of it, which I think is incredibly helpful. The second is a much more of a deeper dive: how to write a letter of amends, how to communicate in a much better way, managing issues such as abuse, mental illness, and the like. And these require a much deeper dive. So that's part 2. And then the third is working with Becca and I together as coaches, and in conferences and Q&As, and that sort of thing, which we're also very, very excited about.
So you could join us for an 8-week program, and each week it would alternate between myself and Josh, and that's really a place to integrate what you've learned in module and level 1 and 2, and be able to apply that to your own practice. Um, and I think because we've already acknowledged this is a really underserved population and there's hardly anyone that we can refer to, then we're really excited that we can bring you on board into our team, because we really feel across the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, there needs to be a lot more people who are as skilled and as kind of versed in the knowledge and research as we are. And we're really keen that people who are impacted by family estrangement have a much closer relationship to those professionals in their individual localities. So they're not just kind of given the option of London or California and that's it. Like, we would really like to have people all over the world who are able to say that they've got that confidence and they've got that training to be able to help people and help people in a non-judgmental way.
One of the things I think we should probably mention, Becca, is that we both actually started from our orientations with personal experience. I was married and divorced in my 20s, and I have a daughter who's fully grown now. But in her early 20s, she had cut off contact with me for several years, and it was easily the most painful, awful, heartbreaking thing I'd ever been through. And at the time, there was nothing written, and the advice I got was terrible. And so I eventually was able to reconcile with her, and blessedly, we're very close again. But that personal experience really gave me a very kind of profound feeling for what it's like, not only to be the parent who's going through this, but also the adult child who's looking for something from the parent that they really need. And how about you, Becca?
Yeah, and so absolutely, I have some skin in the game, if you want to call it that. So yeah, I've been estranged from my parents for 12 years, and despite two or three attempts to try and reconcile and to write to them, and try and express kind of the issues around what was happening, then there's been no movement, unfortunately, on their part. So I have, I've learned and grown through that experience and have moved on in my life, and I'm grateful to say that I feel a lot more settled with that part of my life. But I do acknowledge that it is something that comes up again and again. It's not something that often is done. Like when there's a marriage in the family, a death in the family, when there's a new birth in the family, then it always comes up and it always reoccurs that this is what's happening for me. This is the reality of my relationship with my parents. So I understand, like Josh, how painful it can be. But I've also spent a lot of time and a lot of my hours of, I think, kind of healing time, applying myself to understanding how to heal and grow through this. And I feel so grateful that I've also been able to help so many people be able to do the same. So I think it's really important to kind of understand this issue from the inside, from the people that have been through it. And both Josh and I are uniquely positioned to help you and train you from both the standpoint of being coaches and psychotherapists in this area, but also with people who've got lived experience, who understand the issue from the inside out. And we feel that is just the people that need to be doing this training, and not people that are much more removed and kind of in a more abstract way, understanding this issue academically. Like, we've been through the emotions that your clients will be going through. So we understand and know how to help.
Exactly. Well, anything else you think we should say, Becca? Or do you think that's sort of
No, I think
conservative?
I think it's been lovely to meet you all, and I think it is. We would really love it if you could take module 1 and module 2, and perhaps in module 3 we'll meet you, and we will be, able to study with you online and help you integrate those first 2 modules together. So do go and check out what level 1 module 1 is, and we will see you soon.
So long.
Thank you.
Thank you.